Hi, my name is Elizabeth Cunningham. I'm here with Big Book Analytics, and our goal is to help authors write a query letter that agents can't ignore. How do we do that? We offer an unbiased evaluation of your book blurb, we help you find comparable titles for your manuscript, and we help find the right literary agent match for your book. And we're very excited to have with us today Dr. Pat Spencer to discuss small presses and how you can pitch them. Pat is the author of Golden Boxty in the Frypan, which has garnered praise from the BookLife Prize and ranked 5th in the all-author book cover competition. She's also the author of Story of a Stolen Girl and a work of nonfiction, A Baker's Dozen for Writers, 13 Tips for Great Storytelling. So let's get started. Could you tell me a little bit about your writing journey and what led you to write your, I guess, most current book, Golden Boxty in the Frypan?
Happy to. I was always the kid in school who got so excited when the teacher assigned a research paper. While everyone else was moaning and groaning and falling out of their desks with complaints, I was just so excited because I have always liked to do the research and then write what I learned in a paper, just confident that the world was dying to read it. Usually it was my mother and father and the teacher who read it, of course, but I always got good praise back from my teachers, and that fueled, of course, once someone tells you you're good at something, then you want to do it more. And in high school, I went to the career counseling, as we all are somewhat forced to do in high school. And I said, I want to be a writer. And my counselor got this little, her face was kind of all screwed up and she looked unhappy. And she said, well, it says here the average writer makes $7,000 a year. And I thought, oh my gosh, that means I live in California. So I'm thinking, okay, well, so that means I have to supplement my income with food stamps or something, because nobody can live very well on $7,000 a year. So I was working. When I got out of high school, I went to cosmetology school, and I worked for about 2 years doing people's hair, and I wanted more. Excuse me. So I went back to college, and I very quickly realized that I could teach cosmetology and I could write both. I could combine both those things that I really enjoyed doing. And I found a niche. I found a small niche. I wrote for a national beauty school journal, and I wrote for a tabletop magazine in the Inland Empire. It was called Inland Empire Magazine. And it was one of those nice, glossy, really pretty. I wrote a column called Dear Pat because I was a cosmetologist, so people wrote in and asked me questions. And then I also wrote a few articles on women who were working in traditional, non-traditional jobs, police officers, coaches. And now, while that's just every day, we just think, oh, yes, we don't think anything about it. But back in the early 90s, women were just starting to break into those. And so I wrote several articles about that. And then I started writing that was a monthly column. Then I had the opportunity to write my column weekly for the Riverside Press Enterprise in the Inland Empire. So I took that. And then as I was going through the years and years of education, because I did ultimately get my PhD, I had all kinds of opportunities to do research and write those up and then send them off to places where they published academic works. And so I was just a happy camper. Writing nonfiction was really, really quite easy for me. And I literally sold everything I wrote. And so when I retired, I decided I wanted to try fiction. And I'd had this idea rolling around in my head for a book. And so I thought, that the path to writing being a paid writer, still not enough to live off of, but being recognized, it was a pretty easy path. So I expected the same thing in fiction. What a wet towel in the face. Fiction is, first of all, it's a very crowded arena. There are so many of us out there doing our very best to write a good novel or a good memoir. And it's very difficult. For me, fiction is writing is much more difficult than just writing out the facts and putting a spin, a new thought on them. So my journey then included, the first book I wrote was Story of the Stolen Girl. And I queried about 100 agents, and I got a couple of very flattering declines. Most of the agents just ignored me. And so I thought, well, what do you do then? So I was in a critique group, and they said, well, you publish it yourself. And I thought, well, wow, how do I do that? And so they coached me through the process. My husband actually did the cover, which was quite painful for him because he's an accountant with no apparent artistic skills that we knew of before this, and very little tolerance for technology. And so he learned all that. He did the formatting. He did all the technical side. And the book is beautiful. But when we finished, he said, I don't want to do that again. And I was already writing my second book. I was well into Golden Boxty and the Frypan, and simultaneously a trilogy that is under contract to be published, but it's not appearing yet. It's in the editing process. And so I thought, well, gosh, okay. So what do I do now? I didn't have good luck with agents. My husband doesn't want to do this anymore, and I can't blame him. It was hard. It was very hard. And so I thought, well, what do I do? So I went online and I discovered that there are traditional publishers who do not want to work with an agent. And they're typically fairly small. And for one reason they don't want to deal with agents is they don't want to give up another 15%. They're small. They have small staffs. They don't have the funds, frankly, to give to an agent. So they are open directly to submissions from authors. I was surprised how many small publishers, small presses are out there. I thought maybe I'd find one or two, but for both my books, my genres, Golden Boxty is coming of age historical fiction. The book that has found a home but is in the editing process is called Sticks in a Bundle, and it's literary fiction. And I found about a dozen really good fits, I thought, really good fits for each of those books. And that was enough. I got very nice responses back, even from those who, the line is, it's not a good fit for us right now. But I got really nice responses. It wasn't just the click, just that, thank you for sending. We're not, we can't take it right now. I got nice responses about the writing, about the plot. Still, the last sentence was, it isn't a good fit for us right now. But I got good responses. I got lots of requests for full. So I was very encouraged, and ultimately was offered a contract for Golden Boxty and the Frying Pan with Pennant Publications. And then I also have a contract going with a different publisher for the trilogy. And so that was my journey. It was interesting because it was a smooth journey as a nonfiction writer, and then it became a very bumpy road. But I did it. I got, someone else said, your work is worth our investing in. We think it's good enough. We're willing to put our staff, our time, our effort, our money, our resources behind you. And I got to tell you, that's quite high. And so I'm kind of hooked on these small presses, and they did it for me, and I'm going to do my very best for them.
Yeah, that's such a inspiring story. It is a very difficult road, but you found a way into it. I am curious, with the small presses, how did you compile lists or find those, and how did you know whether they were legitimate or not? Because I think that can be a concern sometimes. There's kind of these smaller presses, and it's uncertain whether or not it's a legitimate business.
Well, it's interesting that that's the next question you asked, because I'm actually now now teaching a class called Yes, You Can Publish Traditionally Without a Literary Agent. And I taught it at a Southern California Writers Conference and at the Long Beach Writers Club. And in January, I'm giving it to another writing club in Southern California. I'm teaching people what I've learned in the Hard Knock School of Publishing. And the research is not as hard as you might think. I started out just logging on and typing in something terribly academic like publishers that don't need an agent. And then I got a lot. And so then I thought, okay, we need to narrow this a bit. And so then I put publishers who don't require an agent for historical fiction or literary fiction or thrillers or, whatever. And I'm surprised at the information that is out there. It's all out there and it's current. Readsy does a wonderful program that you can log on to, and it's got the little drop down menus, and you can click on your genre, and if you click on accepting submissions, that was kind of secret code for we don't need an agent. And it brings up a list of those small to medium publishers who don't require an agent, are accepting direct submissions. And it gave you a contact's name, their website, a paragraph on what they were looking for, sometimes what they specifically were not looking for. And then you could just click and would take you to their website, so you could get the more information to write the dreaded query letter and whatever materials you would want. Then there's a number of blogs out there that deal with the propping up of new small presses, or those that have a good record talking about those and just giving lists. There's a blog called Writers Beware online. So you can look there to make sure that the last thing you want to do is the first one you get an offer from is, like number 2 on Writers Beware. But then the research is, you have to do it yourself, because people aren't wanting to be sued. So they're not going to post things like this press, yada, yada, yada. Not very often, so you have to dig. And one thing that is very popular right now is for writers who have published 1 or 2 books to then declare themselves as a publisher. And all they've published is their own books. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't join a new endeavor, because that's how new endeavors get going, is that people believe in them and they invest in them, time, money, or whatever efforts, and then they become a success. But you want to be careful, because that's not every writer out there is not genetically predisposed to be a good publisher. It's really hard work. And so you really have to look into that and do your investigation, maybe even talk, if you can get a phone number, and chat with this person to see, is this a person you want to be on the train in the first cart with them and help them become a success, or are you not up to that? It's also important to look, maybe they have 20 books published and they look pretty good, and 5 of them were just published in this year. That for small press, that's looking pretty good. But then when you look at the books, they're all written by the publisher, the managing editor, and the marketing person. They haven't done any outside. And then then look and make sure every publisher has their books on the website. So pick a few of them and find out when they were published. Were they published in 19 something or another? Or in 2001, and each book has 10 reviews, and their sales ranking is 8,222,000. So it takes a lot of time. Researching the agents takes a lot of time because you have to do all that customizing. But researching the publisher, you also need to make sure that publisher is what you want. It's a good fit, but they're actually going to publish your book, and they're going to put some resources behind it. And the books they published, try to get a sample or two. Make sure they're well edited, they're well formatted. It takes some work.
Yeah. That actually, the research bit of it brings me to another question. It's actually kind of a two-part question, I guess. One is, could you talk a little bit about your querying process back when you were querying agents, and what your query letter looked like, how you built it, and then also the query process for the smaller presses and how it might have been different, or maybe it was the same?
They're both pretty similar. For the setting up the query letter for the agent, I always made sure that my 1 or 2, 3 sentence elevator pitch, my log line were right up front, as close to the front as I could get it. And then the nonfiction data, how big is your book? Is it complete? What's the genre? Who's the typical reader? What are some comparison books? And then a short bio, and a little bit. I always put in a little bit about my marketing, what I do, my presence on social media, and what else I was going to do to market my book. The letter for the agent, as far as I could determine, and as far as I handled it, was just a little more personal. For the publisher, the small publishers, they are less interested in, it seemed to me, less interested in that personal contact. They want to know that they publish your kind of book and that it's a good book. It was less personal. It was still pretty much the same, but just a little less personal, I thought.
Right. And how did you approach personalizing the query letters when you were targeting the agents?
I researched them. They'll give you a little information. Most have a paragraph, or sometimes several paragraphs on the agency's website about themselves, what they like, what they do in their spare time. Now, the training I took on a query letter said, do not put in there that you like to walk on the beach and bake chocolate chip cookies. They really don't care about that. They want the information that makes you the best person to write this book. On a small press, the personal information of those that I queried and I researched, the personal information about the person you're sending this to just wasn't there. It's not on the website. And sometimes you're not quite sure just who you're sending it to. There's no name even. There's just I would send it to the managing editor, or if I could tell that it was the owner, to the owner. It was a little more formal, I'd say. But all the other was the same.
That's good to know. And how we'll actually talk a little bit about the publishing process itself now. So with the press that you worked with, can you describe the process from the moment that they accepted your book until the book's actual publication?
It was a lot of work. I published a nonfiction book when I was still teaching. It's kind of a textbook, but not the main textbook. It's more of a side and enhancing book to the topic. And I published it with Cengage, which back then was called Milady, and before that it was something else. It's a long-standing educational publisher, and they're big. And so I sent them. I didn't even realize there were rules, or there were desires that publishers had, how, about writing a proposal, all that. I didn't know any of that. I wrote my book and I sent it to them. And they wrote back and said, and this is back when we were doing snail mail, They wrote back and said, it's too long. If you take 50 pages out of it, we'll publish it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought that's the way it was going to go when I did fiction. So I took 50 pages out. I condensed and shortened, as we always can, sent it back. And about 2 months later, they sent me this beautiful cover art and said, how do you like it? I said, I love it. About 2 months later, they sent me galleys. And they sent me 4 of them and said, you and some friends go through this and see if you see any typos. We found like 3 or 4 typos. I don't know if they were my typos or their typos or what. But so we did that, sent it back. Then probably 2 months after that, they send me a letter. Your book's finished. You'll be getting 10 copies in the mail. And I mean, that's been 6 months.
So easy and fast.
So easy. It was literally like sending it off with a nanny, and they took care of everything. And so I did talk to my contact person. I said, how do I get more author copies? And she said, well, what are you going to do with them? I said, well, I will go around to the cosmetology schools and I'll try to sell them. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. We have a marketing team. They'll take care of that for you. Oh, okay. So the books sold for 25 years, literally, and they took care of it. I mean, it was just so easy. With a small publishing press, they don't have that kind of staff. It's my experience that everybody working at a small publisher wears 2 or 3 hats, maybe more. It is, frankly, I don't think they have the funds to hire the top-notch editors. They're good. They work hard. They try. They do their very best. But I still find, and I find this with my other friends who have published with the small presses, the editing still comes back to you. You've got to be sure it's right, and you've got to be bold enough to say, no, that's not correct sentence structure. You have to stand up for what you believe in and work through that. The same thing with the cover. You have to take a very active role. Well, I didn't have to physically do the work of the cover. Basically, I designed the cover. I got the artwork. So it's very much more hands-on. Fortunately, it was the kind of hands-on that I could do. I didn't have to learn how to use some program that put words on top of a photograph and made it beautiful and did an exotic print. I didn't have to learn how to do a spine and all of that stuff. But it's still a lot of work with a small press. You really are a full partner in getting this book out and getting it out with the best quality that all of you can manage.
And actually, with that in mind, what was the marketing process like? I'm sure that you were also pretty heavily involved in that.
Most of the marketing falls to the author. Each company that I researched and that my friends have shared about, they do different levels of marketing. It seems that the larger the press is, the more resources they have to market. I can't say that I enjoy it, but I do a lot of marketing every day, literally every day, sometimes a couple times a day. I have a personal email list of 2,000 folks who I send things to. I have MailChimp. I have MailerLite. I do Facebook and Twitter and all of these things that I had never done any of until I became a published author. It's a very steep learning curve. I am still learning what catches people's attention, what doesn't. I've actually found some sites that help you. like all author has a little program there. They're trying to entice you to join, but they have a really good free program where you can actually download the cover of your book. And it's very easy to put whatever you want to say about your book. And they're very, very attractive. They're really, really attractive. And you can email them, or you can put a link to them, and all this kind of thing. So I am learning to do a lot more of that. But the marketing is huge. But you have to do it. I don't really know how many books are on Amazon. I've heard rumors that there's like 40 million. I don't know. The number I used earlier, the 8,222,000,000, I actually know that person. That author is a friend of mine. So I know there are over 8 million books trying to be sold on Amazon. And so the marketing is hard. I've taken the little class on how to do an Amazon ad. I took the little class on how to do a Facebook ad. I tried doing a Amazon ad, and it was rejected.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to need to watch the class again.
Oh, no.
And try again, because I do want to try that. It seems you can set how much you want to spend a day or a week or a month or whatever. You can keep it economical. So I'm going to take another run at that when my ego heals a little.
Oh, that's too funny. How did you get your email list of the 2,000 people? Was that from your previous book that you just kind of slowly built it up, or where did you build that initial audience?
Besides friends, relatives, everyone I've ever played golf with, I've managed to get their email. And when you spend 4 or 5 hours with somebody, towards the end of the round, they agree to buy your book. People that I've met, I've belonged to a number of writing critique groups, and I swear by them. They are so good for helping authors, and from the writing to the moral support to the wiping your tears to helping you publish. I mean, they're fabulous. So I have the emails of all of those people that I've been in groups with. Just collection of friends and relatives I've taught at several conferences, so I've picked up emails. One thing that I do in my marketing, Golden Boxty and the Frypan has a lot of food relationships in it. There's no recipes in the book, but it's an Irish coming of age. It's an Irish family. And so food is important. Food and drink both are important with the Irish. And so many of the dishes happen at a certain time, have a certain mood to them. Some of them have a meaning. And so I've taken my family recipes and written them up with an excerpt from the book, what the recipe is meaning, what the food, what the experience is meaning at the time, and then the recipe. And so I email those out. And then when I go to any event, I tell people, if you want my recipes, put your email here. And I've gotten lots and lots. And then I've just people who have recommended, this person's going to like your book. And so it's just built and built over time.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Just one last question, actually, and that is, do you have any words of advice or wisdom for someone who's just starting out on the publication process?
Two things. One is be ready to accept that if you aren't famous, you haven't been in federal prison, you aren't a politician, or you haven't even slept with a famous politician, if you don't have that movie star claim, keep your expectations realistic so your heart won't be broken, but stay with your heart. I hear so many people say, here's the trend. Write what's the trend, write what you know. I say write what your heart wants to write, because in the end, maybe it's like for me, maybe it's going to turn out to be a fabulous, fabulous hobby. And so you want your heart to be in it. You want to tell the story you want want to tell. And then the second thing, in addition to staying true to your heart, is join a critique group. They are fabulous. It's a group of like people. They're more than likely going to be in different levels of their expertise, different levels of their career. They're going to be probably all the critique groups I have been a member of were a mixture of genres. But they all know something that you don't know, and they're all willing to give, and you become this little writing family. And my work has improved a zillion times thanks to the writing critique groups that I have been in.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I think it is also helpful to have those different genres, because you can learn so much from
Yes.
that alone.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you, sitting down and sharing all of your knowledge and insights. It's been really fun and helpful. I'm sure that people enjoy reading about what you have to say.
Thank you.